Once again, a huge welcome from Cambridge Biomedical Campus Wellness Campaign. I'm Jill Wilson, and wherever you are in the world today, welcome. As we know, the desire and the need for wellness is universal, and these webinars are not just for the 20,000 plus people working on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, they're for everyone. So please feel free to share links far and wide. Today, I have great pleasure in introducing Liam Rushmer and Paul Ward. They will actually introduce themselves, but you will have seen on the publicity a little bit about their backgrounds. Please, can you put any questions as you think of them in the Q&A, and Liam and Paul will attempt to answer some of them after the presentation. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to them. Welcome, Liam and Paul.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jill, and welcome everybody. I've just shared my screen. Hopefully everyone can now see that, as we're going to go through some slides to begin with. But as Jill said right at the start there, please do drop any questions, comments, anything you want us to explain a little further as we go through the webinar. But let's start. But I'm going to immediately hand back to Liam to introduce today's webinar, the mindset and motivation behind wellness. So over to yourself, Liam.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jill, and thank you everyone for attending today. I know time is money and time is precious, so we're going to fill your time with the mindset motivation behind wellness. So we're going to understand more about mindset, how that's going to help you motivate yourself to do more within wellness, exercise and fitness, become healthier both mentally and physically. So if we can move through, I'm just going to introduce myself, and Paul will do the same. So I'm Liam Rushmer. I'm the owner and founder of Fitness Rush. So as it says here, I'm a pioneer of fitness, as I turn to helping those who typically don't want to go to busier gyms or busier environments. So I opened up a facility for personal trainers and clients so they could just enjoy and benefit from fitness. And as we did so well within our community, I designed a fitness facility on wheels so we can take it to the wider community. So that's really helped us work with individuals who might be homeless, deprived, can't typically afford fitness. We're just giving everyone the opportunity to benefit from our physical and mental health initiatives. So yeah, this gives a little bit of insight to what I do and what we're currently doing in the community. So Paul, if I hand over to you.
Excellent, thanks, Liam. And so a quick introduction to myself, because Liam and I operate our own businesses. So I operate as a personal transformation coach. I work with business owners, individuals, people who are looking to move forward in their lives and use coaching to make that happen. I primarily use a tool called Neuro-linguistic programming. Many of you may know that as NLP. So I not only use that in my coaching, I'm a trainer of NLP, and currently in the middle of a NLP master practitioner course, which we're delivering here in Cambridgeshire. I also use a tool called Motivational Maps, which is a direct link to how Liam and I collaborate. More on that as we go through the webinar. So my company is Blacktop Coaching, which I formed, or I rebranded as Blacktop Coaching in 2020, but I've been coaching for over 10 years now, as well as training people with helping other coaches to get out there and work with people with their mindset and motivation. So this is where I've been for the last 10 years or so. Prior to that, I was in retail management and understanding how working with a diverse group of people in retail, actually that's where my interest in personal development came from. And as the years went by, I moved around and went to different places, and I thought to myself, do you know what, I need to perhaps focus on my own fitness, my own wellness. And part of that is practicing what I preach as a coach and encouraging other people to look after themselves and get the right mindset towards, well, let's face it, we're all getting older. So I was looking around for a very specific gym, a very specific way of training, because I wasn't one of those people who knew what they were doing when they went to the gym. So that's where I came across Liam. And I first of all started going to Liam's gym because I could see that actually what Liam was doing was working with people individually, working with people in an environment that was safe, comfortable, inspiring and motivating. And as I went across and found myself enjoying going to the gym for the first time because of the way in which Liam was training and the ethos that he had in the gym, that between us, we started talking a lot about mental health, talking about mindset, mental fitness, as well as physical fitness, and how the two things definitely combine, particularly when it comes to motivation. So over a period of a year, or maybe less than a year, we started to realize we had an opportunity to be able to spread this message out to as many people as possible. At least that's how I see it. Liam, did you see it in the same way?
Well, I hardly see you, Paul, to be honest. No, joking. No, you do very well. Yes, I did see it the same way. And my life has changed a lot over the past few years after I had 2 children in particular. Before that, I was very regimented with my eating. I was training 4 or 5 times a week to certain time slots, very autist schedules. When children come along, things changed. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about my children. Now my motivation has changed. It's very difficult for me to motivate myself to do exercise, even though I own gyms, etc., and also motivate myself to eat properly, as I know, or correctly. So talking with Paul, he's helped me a lot with my motivation, what is more important, and then working with mindset around that. So I don't think I was ready, Paul, when you first come along, because I was already in kind of a very good way of training, eating, etc. Is when my life changed, that's when you become very important to me, and the work we do. So I've kind of gone full circle, really.
Yeah.
And obviously you've seen the same things with your children. And
absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be many people who are joining us live today and also watching the recording that can relate to those stories that we've just started with. And obviously there's a reason why we started those stories, to say we're not here to preach. We're not here to tell you what you must be doing. It's more a case of just raising awareness, a heightened awareness of what wellness is and what it means, but also being increasing a level of realism, I guess, that we've all got jobs, we've all got families. Well, not all of us have got jobs. The people who are currently working with Liam, they're all struggling to actually just have a roof over their heads. But certainly in the context of this webinar, it's actually putting that backdrop behind us that we all come from a different angle. So of course there isn't one size will fit all, but we just want to explore through the next half an hour or so what we mean by wellness, and just throw some information out there so that we can just explore what it means to you and just talk about motivation and moving things forward. So wellness is a word that now, thankfully, it gets used an awful lot in all businesses and in social media, but what exactly is it? And as I'm now asking this question, feel free just to throw in the chat and your view of what wellness is, because of course what we've got on here is a number of words on the screen that we've summed it up for the purpose of the webinar. To be able to increase this level of social awareness, to be able to connect with people, feel great, practice mindfulness. There's so many different ways in which we can do that now. I guess in one sense, there's a question is, well, what's going on to prevent people from making that step towards wellness? But knowing that actually it isn't about getting up at 4 a.m. to do your run before you hit the gym and then have a swim before you then cook your healthy breakfast. There are people out there that pump that out in the social media world to tell us that's the only way that wellness exists. But we are here to be able to encourage people to think about wellness and making just simple, sensible, healthy choices in your life, in your nutrition, in your exercise, into your interaction with others, to be able to start focusing on what wellness means to you. Anything you want to add to that, William? Liam?
I just want to reinforce a message that we're not here to force anything onto anyone. We're here to offer options and opportunities to people if they want to to do something different that they're already doing, then hopefully we can help you today. That's the main thing. But yeah, when it comes to wellness, I think there's kind of a big kind of scope now. Wellness means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I can see someone's put a big bit in there. We'll come back to that later. But yes, I think wellness means a lot to different people. And one thing I just want to add about Weight Watchers. You've all heard of Weight Watchers, Simon, etc. Weight Watchers are now wellness that works, because they know that wellness is now a bit bigger than weight loss. So that's, I don't know if everyone knew that, but yeah, a lot of big industries or a lot of big organizations are going down the same route. Wellness in the workplace, etc. People know wellness is important, but do they know how to tackle it, and do they know how to really enforce that home? So I think we'll talk more about that as we go along, especially down the corporate route, as I'm sure some of you are working within organizations today. So yes, Paul.
Yeah, no, it's a good reframe that Weight Watchers have come up there, because of course when you think of Weight Watchers, there's one thing we're focusing on, which is weight, which is not wellness. Sort of changing it to include wellness into the title there, or the view from that company is a great move, because that's what we want to focus on. We don't want to focus on what we've got to lose. We want to focus on what we're going to gain and where we're going to move towards. But the difficulty, and certainly what I find with the work that I do in lots of aspects of people's lives, and I know Liam finds this as well, is people will all say stuff like, I know I'll go to the gym when I feel motivated. When I feel really motivated, that's when I'll go. But I just want to throw a challenge out really around motivation, what it really means. And I'd be curious to read what people think what motivation is. But there's some great literature out there. Daniel Pink in particular has written a great book on motivation, and he sums it up very much that actually motivation is what happens once you do an activity or take an action from which you get feedback mentally or physically that brings you joy, pleasure, or moving you towards where you want to be, or a sense of accomplishment or achievement. Then the motivation kicks in to then do it again. So just considering what motivation really means to you, and it's not necessarily, or I actually don't think it is, something that will suddenly walk up behind you and tap you on the shoulder and say, right, we're ready now. It's almost like we've got to take that step slightly out of our comfort zone, just beyond, to be able to challenge ourselves in a subtly different way, be that exercise, be that reading a book to find out a bit more about nutrition, be that, as I did 3 years ago, deciding to give up meat and making these small steps, then I'm motivated to eat more healthily as a result of it. To really start to think now about what it is that motivates you in the context of moving towards wellness and moving towards exercise and nutrition in your world. What would need to be in place to help you feel that sense of motivation following achievement? What would be your goals that you would want to set? Liam, you look like you already need an opportunity to say something from a motivation.
Yeah, I just want to, thanks for your relatable stories. And I just want to thank Catherine for being so honest there about you lost your eating healthily too when you had children. Yes, we know children are very stressful. But yeah, you're turning it around to show them how to eat healthily. That is, spot on. Well done, you. So motivation. Obviously, I work with a lot of clients within the fitness industry, and I hear this a lot. If they're on their own training, maybe going to the gym later after work, they'll go home first. And once their bum had touched the sofa, that was them in front of the telly. The motivation had gone. Now, is that motivation, or is that just you being more comfortable sitting on your seat? So if we had a goal in mind that we need to achieve something, and to achieve that, we need to go to the gym, or we need to go and exercise, we need to go and see our personal trainer, then the motivation will kind of be there anyway, if we're working towards something. So I think, like Paul said, motivation is more than just a word. There's a lot more to it, but we'll talk more as we go through.
Excellent, good stuff. And I've seen a couple of things in the chat there as well that When you know it's a cold night, you don't necessarily want to go out and do the exercise. So that's a demotivator, knowing that it's cold. So what would motivate you to do a different type of exercise, or a different, take on a different new learning within your environment at home or at work or whatever it might be? There are other opportunities that that are connected to wellness that don't simply mean get out and do a run. Get out and do a run if that's something you feel motivated by, but there are other things we can explore. Yeah.
But if you're training for a competition, for example, if you're doing a charity event for a month, for example, if you're doing it for someone, or you have some accountability, you're much more likely to do that thing. If it's just for yourself, go for a swim on a dark, cold night, you think, oh, it's warmer inside. But if you're raising money, or someone's relying on you to do something, you're much more likely to do it. I think that's why a lot of people use personal trainers, so they have accountability there, that they're going to see someone and they don't want to let someone down. So again, that's an option of maybe doing something for charity, or working with a personal trainer, or maybe training with a friend that you don't want to let down. That again is a way of motivating yourself.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned children a few times, so I'm going to throw my children into the ring, as it were. One thing I've considered recently was, I was getting frustrated with the kids being, I think it's coming out of winter, they get so comfortable, and encourage them to get out and do stuff. And I felt I wanted to do something as well. So rather than seeing an obstacle with having the children with the half term just gone, I decided, well, we'll book ourselves a badminton court. And we went and played badminton. And when we were there, it's a case of, well, we're here now, we went swimming. So you just add these things on, and just, because I felt motivated the first time I took them, and then continued to do so. And I'm sure we've all been in that situation. So
Who won, Paul?
I did, of course. You can't let children.
That won't happen forever. You know that.
I know. Once they get,
you have to keep going.
Yeah.
When they start winning, doesn't mean you can stop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'll just keep being motivated to beat them. So
Hey, that's where your motivation comes from.
Entirely right. Yeah, we enjoy it, we move forward, and we do want to do more of it, which is this whole mindset that we've mentioned a few times, that we all have a mindset. And it might be that your mindset has got you to where you are now. We've all heard that phrase. What got you to here is not going to get you to where you want to be. It's about shifting that perspective just very, very slightly. If we just focus constantly on the things that we can't do, or the things that are preventing us from doing things, then funnily enough, they become very big. If we start looking a little bit more as to how we can shift that mindset in such a way that we put ourselves almost in the center of that, to just think, well, actually, because it's almost like the cause and effect, isn't it? That if I feel tired, if I feel sluggish, if I feel that actually there's a sense of stress creeping in, it's all those external things that feel like they're pushing down on us. But as it's mentioned here on this slide, we can start taking care of ourselves, getting good sleep, being able to eat the right foods, educating ourselves on the right foods, which is a journey I'm on at the moment, in terms of, okay, it's all very well giving up meat, but actually then what do I replace it with to ensure that I still get the right nutrients and minerals inside me? So it's just, education is a huge part of it. But if we start to realize that how our mindset affects the world around us, it gives us a chance to be able to respond to the challenges that we're facing, as opposed to reacting to the external world, and we start to blame everything around us for why we're not feeling the way we want to feel. So it's an opportunity to just question your current mindset and start considering, how could I make those subtle changes to my mindset that are going to bring me the things that I want? So there's a great book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. There's an element at the beginning where he talks about, when you are thinking about taking on exercise or nutrition or wellness in general, it would be useful for you to think to yourself, well, what would the mindset of an elite athlete be doing at this stage? What decisions would they be making? And of course, as we said at the beginning, we're not here to encourage you to become elite athletes, but just putting your mindset into, what would a healthy person choose to do at this point? And just see if that will start to alter your mindset towards wellness as you move forward. Liam.
But if you do want to be an elite athlete, we can help with that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we're under no illusion that even if you knew every cheat code, every kind of how to eat well, how to exercise well, how to do everything perfectly, life isn't that simple. We all have bad days, may that be 1, 2, 3 or 4 days. Me personally, if I have a negative day, I seem to soak in all the negativity around me, and that could last for a few days until I talk to Paul and he sets me straight and on the straight and narrow. But we're under no illusion that life is simple. If you're working, if you've got children, there's always something that's going to be playing on your mind, causing some sort of stress either to your mind or body. Just because someone else is suffering through stress doesn't mean it makes yours any less. Sometimes people say, this person is suffering more than me, I shouldn't feel bad, but you're going through what you're going through. So what I'm trying to say, I think, is we're going to have bad days, make the best of the good ones. And I think just reading through this connection slide right now, the mindset can encourage you to take care of yourself and make healthy, sustainable choices. I think sustainable is a very good point. We need it to be a long-term thing rather than just now. I think, Paul, you probably agree with that. We're not doing it for short-term gains. It's a long-term process that we're looking to work towards.
Absolutely. And I think connecting back to
You there, Paul?
I am. Are you?
Oh, Paul's frozen.
Oh, 1 second. Am I back?
It's fine. You're both moving to me.
Okay, we'll continue. Apologies for that. So, leading on from what Liam was saying there, the social media world will kind of give us an indication that there are quick fixes that you can just apply immediately. My view on that is that actually that causes more problems than it solves, because we all feel that we're looking for something to solve our problem for us. But ultimately, it's about our own mindset and how we apply that towards making a difference as we move forward. And I think we've all come across that phrase. I think it was Henry T. Ford, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. So it's all about actually what mindset we apply to the challenges that we face. And as Liam said a few moments ago, we are always faced with challenges. We are always presented with a level of obstacle. It's about seeing it from as many different perspectives as possible, so that we're not in a position to think to ourselves, how can I eliminate the problem? Because that's what's going to wear us out and exhaust us. It's about how can we apply the right mindset so that we can work around, work with, and move forward with the problem or obstacle we find in our way. So I'm going to continue on whilst we're waiting for Liam to come back and rejoin us. So we're going to talk a little bit about the mind muscle, because this is the other thing that relates to that. Because of course, if we have the right mindset, just like all the muscles in our body, we need to practice, we need to repeat, we need to just consistently and continuously work upon it. We're not going to solve a problem overnight. I see that in terms of my personal development work and the coaching work that I do, that what I get, I smile at slightly when I have a client come into me and just say to me, have you not just got a magic wand that you can wave and make me feel great? Unfortunately, no. I would be in a very different position if I did own such a wand. But instead, what it is actually just making those small incremental changes as we move forward, knowing that actually each one of those small changes will actually make a significant difference for us. And I see that definitely when I'm working with people, with the coaching world, with in business or in relationships, or just in setting goals, what people want to achieve more for themselves. But what I want to just talk about, or what we want to talk a little bit more about on this mind muscle slide, is how it applies certainly in terms of exercise, getting going, because I know that for speaking personally, I see people running down the street in my village, and I think to myself, do you know what, if I could fast forward from where I am now, not a runner, to running for 30 minutes very skillfully like these people I see running, then I'll probably be motivated to do it. But there's a process I've got to go through of building that muscle. And Liam's now going to talk a little bit about how we apply the mind muscle. So over to you, Liam.
Am I back on now, am I? I disappeared, Paul.
You're in there. Come on in.
I'm back. Yes, mind muscle. I really wanted to put this slide in just because of the people I work with and people I've seen in the gym before. After a while, exercise or workouts can become mundane, and you're doing it for a certain reason, maybe to say, I went to the gym today. Now, when you're exercising, we might do repetitions, so you might count to 12 repetitions, and sometimes it becomes just a number. Our focus is on the muscle we're working. So for example, if we're doing a barbell or dumbbell curl, we're working the bicep, which is a muscle at the front of the arm. We're really concentrating on the feeling and the contraction and breaking down the muscle fibers to grow them stronger. We won't go too far into the science behind it all. But if we can connect our mind with the muscle we're working, we'll have a much greater contraction, a much greater result. And I think that goes a lot with life in general. If we really put our mind to something and focus on that one thing, I believe the results will be a lot greater, rather than trying to concentrate on a million different things at the same time. I think Paul used a good analogy once about if someone threw 1,000 cocktail sticks at you, you can only catch maybe 5 of them. Now, if you're trying to work too many muscles or do too many things at the same time, the same thing is going to happen. You won't be able to concentrate on the right things. So hopefully, Paul, that kind of leads you into something.
Oh, absolutely, because it's don't worry, I don't spend my training throwing cocktail sticks at everybody that walks through the door, but the analogy is definitely a good one to think about at the moment, because if I now threw this question out, there's 60 odd people on this call right now. If I now said, has anyone here experienced overwhelm? I'd probably have a good stab at most, if not everybody on the call would say that yes, they have experienced overwhelm. So when we think of exercise, nutrition, wellness, all the various different elements of it that get thrown into us at any one time, that can be hugely overwhelming. And that's the cocktail sticks that are getting thrown at us. So it's about catching on to the ones that we feel most connected to, so that we can make a difference, so that we can do something about it. And this repetition that gets talked about in terms of exercise is absolutely the same when it comes to our mind, and also with wellness. And one thing that I've certainly practiced over the last 18 months or so has been meditation. And then again, if I threw this question out to everybody, who on this call meditates or practice mindfulness? Again, there's probably going to be a raised awareness in society now that actually this is a good thing to spend time with a bit of meditation, a bit of mindfulness. But the amount of people who actually give it a go and then turn around and say, because I've been there and I've heard people in my office talking to me about it, I've tried that mindfulness stuff, and you know what, I just can't shut my mind up, so I gave up. Well, do you know what? That's the thing. When you do stop, practice a bit of mindfulness, practice a bit of meditation, you suddenly become aware of actually all the stuff you're telling yourself all of the time. And let's be honest, probably a huge proportion of that is that a nonsense that we're telling ourselves, but it's just that repetition over and over. And if we tend to be a little bit negative to ourselves, that's the voice that we're constantly listening to. So if that was a person standing next to you telling you those things, you'd probably not want to be around them very much. Yet when we practice mindfulness over an extended period of time, we learn to actually just park thoughts, to be able just to spend 5-10 minutes in a quiet space, to be able to lessen that sense of overwhelm. Cool. So moving on to the next slide here. So what we've got here is just thinking now that we've talked a little bit about mindset. We've talked a little bit about wellness. We've talked a little bit about repetition. But then there's a question, isn't there? Well, what's the purpose? What is the long-term vision of me doing this? What is it that I want to actually gain from this? Now, as Liam mentioned earlier, if you've just set yourself, I did an ultra challenge walk a few years back, and we were raising some money for Down syndrome. There was our vision, that was it. But there's that sense that once we completed it, we stopped walking, we stopped training, because we didn't have a longer term vision, a longer term plan of where we wanted to head with this. That actually the walking was leading to us developing friendships, which then led us towards doing more exercise, towards a healthier life and more wellness. So again, I want to encourage everybody on the call to think about, right, I want to exercise, or I want to improve my nutrition. I want to explore mindfulness and meditation. Whatever those goals are, let's go up a level and think to yourself, right, well, if they're the things that I'm going to be doing, what is the purpose for me doing it? And resist the temptation to say, why am I doing it? Because even with the tonality that I use there, it almost sounds mildly accusatory, a little bit of negativity with a why. So let go of the why, because that tends to lead towards a bit of a defensive reason as to what's happening. And so let's just talk about, for what purpose do you want to increase the level of wellness in your life, or in your business, or in your team? What is the longer term purpose for it? So in business, it could be to reduce sickness and absence. It could be to build a culture where we're looking after each other and we're focusing on that for our clients and customers. In your family is so that we can enjoy our lives and have more fun together. So whatever your long-term vision is, ensure that the goals that you're setting yourself will lead towards that. And then there's a greater chance that you will not only achieve those goals, but you will enjoy actually working towards them. You'll find them far more enjoyable, and that motivation will kick in because you will want more of it, because you're leading towards this roadmap towards your longer term vision. Liam.
Yes, and just following on from that, breaking the goals down into bite-sized little chunks, like it says on the screen here. I just believe that when we get a little bit overwhelmed, it's easy to give up, or when things got on top of us, become more stressed, and obviously it's a lot harder. So if we can just set little goals in the beginning, so maybe walk a mile. Then if you're planning to run in between two lampposts, walk a little bit longer, run in between the next two lampposts. So just little bite-sized chunks. Instead of going out for a 5-mile run straight away, maybe struggling, not finishing it, then feeling bad about yourself, just work up to it. And once you get there, you can go a little bit further. So I think that's kind of, instead of starting something big and becoming overwhelmed, I think them smaller little goals maybe might work better for you.
Absolutely, 100% agree. So Liam, I'm going to hand over to you for this slide.
Yes, cultivate. So our mindset affects the majority of the decisions and dictates how we feel or respond to many stresses in our everyday life. And as we well know, there are many stresses in our everyday life. One of them being when you're in your car driving to work or driving somewhere, you might just want to have a nice relaxing drive. But other people around you might be in a rush. You know, it's not something you can control right there and then. So having a positive mindset will make you more aware of what you're doing in your surroundings, and maybe you can control that situation a little bit better, rather than acting over the top way that some of us might if we're stressed out. So the positive mindset may boost our mood, positivity, and overall well-being. And well-being in itself is such a big thing, because it's not just about yourself being well, it's your whole body, your mind, your soul, everything. So negative thoughts can contribute to issues such as social anxiety. Suffered it myself, not nice at all. That was a factor that followed on from a death in the family, and you know, I suffered from mental health. Anxiety was triggered, and it was not a nice place to be. But this is why I come into webinars like this and talk about my journeys, and hopefully people can relate and know that there are people out there listening, and you know, there is a way through, especially through what Paul's going to be helping with the mindset, and myself with the motivation. There's different ways we can get through and become more positive. But yes, so the key aspect to changing your negative behaviors is understanding why you think this way, and the resulting factors attached to it. Then use strategies that we can obviously help with and talk about to change these thoughts and begin to reduce the effects on yourself. So start thinking more positively if possible, and just being aware of the negative thoughts. The steps towards behavior changes could be just to identify your distortions, challenge your thinking. So when you're thinking about something, challenge it. Why am I thinking like this? Compassionate self-talks, be nice to yourself once in a while. Seek support. So Paul is one of my support systems that I use. I'll call Paul if I'm feeling a bit stressed or anxious, and he'll break things down for me and just make me think about what's going on, and there might be a reason behind the things that I haven't thought of. And positive and negative outcomes, think of every outcome rather than just the negative ones. So any thoughts on that, Paul?
So just listening as you were talking through there, and one thing that's kind of coming up, we've got sort of 10 minutes or so before we conclude, so please do enter any questions you want us to refer back to. But this, we've had a bit of a thread running through, haven't we, of talking about this mindset thing. And we've all heard of mindset, and we're all aware that a positive mindset is better than a negative mindset. But here was the first time in the short time that we have together to start thinking about, right, well, okay, you told me about my mindset, but how on earth do I start looking at challenging it and changing it? And those 5 key points on here are so important, as Liam went. So you identify your distortion. You may not even be aware that you distort the world around you, but we do. And the simplest example I can give you about a distortion, there'll be a number of people on this call who may identify as having a phobia. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to test a phobia on this call, but I just want to use it as an example. So there may be people who are uncomfortable around a certain animal, a certain insect, or I'll let you fill in the gaps. So you have one person who sees that insect and reacts in a certain way, and then you have another person next to them who doesn't see anything other than an insect on the floor or an arachnid type thing. You know what I'm talking about. Now, of course, the person who's seeing it, who's carrying a phobia or a negative view, is going to distort what they see to mean something that's really not comfortable for them. So that happens negatively sometimes. And of course, we've all heard of people who, when they are aware of people, and there obviously maybe some people on the call, that when we look in the mirror, we see a distorted version of ourselves looking back. So if we can seek help and support as to what is causing those distortions, and help us be able to perhaps distort less, or maybe let go of that distortion through challenging our thinking, and with the work and help and support of a coach or a therapist to help you through that journey, as well as working with somebody with such as Liam to help you think about what more positive actions could you be taking in your life to feel good about the world in which you're operating nutritionally, exercise, and so on. That's the seek and support part of it. But of course, being kind to yourself is hugely important in it. But certainly looking at all the different outcomes that are possible. So it's a great slide that we could probably talk an awful lot more on, but I'm going to move on to the next one.
That's a brilliant point there, Paul. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm glad you did. I'd be upset if we're on a webinar together and you disagreed with what I said. That's how,
true, but that was something special from the heart.
So belief. So we all have a belief in ourselves, or belief around our wellness, or belief around exercise and what it means to us. But also just looking around to the people around us. I mentioned earlier, I intentionally held back on this part of what I was describing, but have you ever been in the car and you've driving through a village or down a road, and you see one person running and they're fully kitted out in all the lycra and all the kit that they need, and they're clearly they've been training for years and they're great at running. And then you turn the corner and then you see the person who is barely shuffling along, and they've got a pair of trainers on and a tracksuit, and they're barely shuffling along much more than walking. Now, there's an opportunity here for us to now just think about that other person and consider what has led them, what has motivated them to actually then take action to start moving towards wellness and for exercise, because actually something has happened in them that actually is allowing us to feel compassion for that person and avoid comparison, which is very different, to be able to then see that person and think, you know what, that person is making an effort, that person has made a decision that actually they want to improve an area of their life that includes exercising. So there's that element of compassion and belief that we've got on this slide here. But also, I've already mentioned mindfulness. Also thinking in terms, therefore, of stress. As part of today, I'm training NLP next door, and we were talking about a challenge that actually, do people have anxiety? Or is it that actually people have anxious thinking that we label as having anxiety? Now, I know I'm on thin ground here as what people's views are around anxiety, but my view, which is just my view, is one that actually, if people are having anxious thinking, then that leads to them feeling a certain way. And of course, we don't like that. So we call it and say that we have anxiety, but it's about anxious thinking. Now, if we are able to practice mindfulness, even in terms of a mini meditation, to be able to take ourselves out of that anxious thinking, we can start to find what the root cause might be of that anxious thinking, and therefore we can start to manage it in a way that we can then shift it, we can do something about it. Now, I've just mentioned, I'm going to do this because I feel like it's the right thing to do, a mini meditation. So then again, how many have we got on at the moment? We've got 50 odd, 55, 56 people on the call. So I'm not now going to teach you all how to meditate, but I am now going to teach you a very short, quick trick, or technique is probably a better word to use. That when you feel that sense of anxious thinking coming in, when you feel that sense of overwhelm, if we just take a moment, and I'm going to do it here as I'm sat at my screen. I've done this with people on screen, and it's wonderful to see everybody doing it. But if you are feeling that sensation, just to take a moment, just to lift your eyes above eye level, to pick a spot in my office here. I've got a heater on the wall, I'm picking that now. And as you're in that space and just looking upwards, you then just I'm talking obviously, which gets in the way, but if you just take a few moments just to be in peripheral vision, as we call it, just take my glasses off. So I'm in peripheral vision. So I'm now allowing my brain just to quieten down just a little bit. And I've got no idea what you're doing because I can't see you all, but I encourage you just to give it a go now and just...
I'm doing it, Paul.
Good man, good man. So then just become aware as I'm talking, become aware of your breathing. Maybe become aware of the sounds around you. And then just maybe becoming aware that your peripheral vision is just widening slightly. I encourage you to perhaps give this a try after the webinar. And just notice that after a while, your brain waves just quieten down a little bit. And then as you just let your eyes drift back down to your screen or the activity that you're taking part in, you may have noticed that the anxious thinking has quietened down a little bit. And maybe there's an opportunity to you to focus on the next task rather than this overwhelm of all this task that's coming in. So thank you if you did take part, and thank you, Liam, for taking part. So
thank you, Paul. Now I realise how much I need the toilet. So thanks for that. I just want to go back to runner number 1 and runner number 2, because runner number 1 was probably like runner number 2 or 3 years ago. Maybe started just before COVID or during COVID. Number 2 will get there. Congratulations, number 2, on starting. You might have seen someone in the gym before thinking, wow, they've got a lot of work to do. But at least they're there, and at least they've started. You know, everyone in that gym who's looking good didn't start that way. They had to work towards it. So massive compassion and props out to the people who are starting. And that's exactly why I built the facility I did, for those who maybe don't want to be around other people, watching them or judging them, because even though we say we probably don't judge is there's a human nature. We do it, whether right or wrong. But yeah, so I set up the facility so people can just be themselves and enjoy fitness again, and hopefully work towards being around more people eventually.
No, I agree. I think just before we move on to the final slides here, just that judgment thing there, I think that we often think to ourselves, well, I'm going to be a person who doesn't judge others. And as Liam says, well, actually, you know, that's going to be really difficult. So what I encourage people to do is be aware of when you are judging. Question yourself, what is it that's going on inside me that's causing me to judge the other person, positively or negatively, and then consider then what that is, what there is to learn from that you can then do something about, because it's got nothing to do with the other person. The other person is just a trigger for your judging the thoughts that's causing something inside you. So the points at the bottom here, that number 2, facing your fears, facing your judgment, the source of your judgment, we could replace that with to explore, okay, what it is because with using runner number 2, the one who's just got started, if we are judging that person for not being a great runner, basically what I would interpret it to is I'm telling myself that I'm even worse because I'm not even out there. So there will always be a level of judgment. So let go of the need to feel that I don't judge. It's about lessening that amount of judgment and looking for the source for it to let go of it. So, and
we never know what's going on with the other person, Paul.
Absolutely.
You know, they
might that vision we talked about, they're on a journey somewhere and they're moving towards it, which is fantastic. So got a couple more slides to go. So Liam, I'm just going to hand you for this one, and if that's okay.
I'm just going to move my little things across. Run away. Okay, the power. We have the power. We all have the power. So individuals with a powerful growth mindset can see their basic abilities as a launch pad for the potential. So they're ready. They're going to launch yourself into something. Entrepreneurs might be a good point. So this has a positive impact on the overall health and happiness. The belief in their efforts has a significant effect on their overall success. So extra time and attention can be put into developing areas they wish to improve on. This can lead to a high achievement rate and feelings of optimism throughout their lives. So grounding techniques are just one of many methods we can build up resilience. Steady and physical emotional presence supported by the ground. So I'm just going to get Paul to do that in a second. He'll talk more about that. But just talking about the power, I'm currently working with a group of individuals with our mobile fitness facility. So these people are falling on hard times. Something might have happened to them that now they found themselves in a sticky situation. So might be living in a shop doorway or in sheltered housing. So we've come in and I've sat down with every single one of them and spoken to them. They are real people. They are just like me and you. They might have fallen on hard times. So we're going to be personal training them and also doing fitness qualifications with them. And even from last week, we started the qualifications. They're sitting down, they listened to me, they took everything in, they had great questions. And I'm just really excited to see how far they're going to take this and how far they're going to go. Because now they have this launch pad, they have the power and they can do anything with that power. And the same goes for you. If you find something you're passionate about and you want to follow that, that can be your launch pad into something successful for yourself and others around you.
Absolutely.
So I'll let you go back to the grounding techniques, Paul, because that's probably more.
Yeah, we'll go through this, and then we've got one more slide, and then we're heading towards a few questions and answers. Q&A, that's the word I was looking for. So this wonderful technique, some of you may have already come across it. I certainly have. I remember working with a guy. I went to see him in his office, and he was working for one of the big four, and he was talking about overwhelm. So again, I've left you with the mini meditation. Here's another one to just consider. So when you are in your office, in your workspace, or something's going on in your world that's creating this level of anxious thinking, or let's dare we say call it stress levels are high, take the opportunity to get up and walk around and consider these elements. Just walk around, and where I'm sat here, I'm in a lovely place. I can see out on a golf course. If I was to now walk out, I would be wanting to focus on 5 things that I can see. So literally looking up, I can see a tractor, a tree, I can see the putting green. Then 4 things you can feel. Now, in order for that to happen, you've got to get out there and actually touch the tree or the wall or whatever it might be, and just consciously look for those 4 things that you can then say and feel the texture of them. So you're heightening another sense, another awareness. Then consider 3 things specifically that you can hear. And in order to do that, you've got to listen. You've got to be able to really pick out a sound, 3 different sounds that you can hear. Getting slightly trickier as we get towards the pointy end here. I'm just saying that 2 things that you can smell. Now, as we've got these wonderful sensory receptors in our bodies, and as we move around in the world that we exist in, how often are we just very focused? We can only use these smell stuff when it's particularly nice or particularly bad. But just raising awareness and just thinking, right, in my environment right now, I'm going to focus and just find 2 things that I can smell, to identify 2 different smells. Taste, of course, depends on where you're at and what you're doing, but actually there's an opportunity that actually it might simply be that taste that you just carry around in your body all the time, the taste in your mouth. And the point being, become more aware of it, because we tend to just get so caught up in ourselves that we lose our awareness. And just going through that process, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, grounding yourself, it's amazing the effect that it has on feeling much more grounded as you move towards, particularly if you are, I do a lot of presenting. I'm presenting this afternoon. I'm on a podcast interview in a short while. This is going to be a great exercise for me once we've finished this webinar, to have a wander around, consider all those things, come back into this room ready for the next conversation that I'm going to have. So I encourage you to do the same thing. So just conscious of time, I'm going to move to the next slide here. I just
want to quickly add that it can be easier said than done. We are all human, or suffer from anxious thoughts. And even if you just looked around and found a few different things to look at, and not overwhelm your mind. We know when you're going through something like that, your heart rate's raised and you don't know where you are. Just looking at a few things. Another good one I found is going into a bathroom and a toilet and just splashing your face with cold water back in the room. Give it a try.
Absolutely. So, in conclusion, just going to conclude now as we move forward. Thanks once again for your time, for spending with us, and for reviewing this if you're watching it later. So we've talked all the way through about how mindset affects wellness. So we want to talk a lot more as we talk beyond this webinar to people about what is going on in your mindset. How can you affect it? How can you positively affect it? How can you notice what's negatively affecting it? So what changes can we make along the way? We talked about motivation as being something that comes from taking an action, to taking part in an activity or making a choice, or feeling that you've achieved something that actually you've been working hard towards, or actually you weren't working hard towards it at all. It's simply something you noticed happening that you felt motivated and encouraged to do it again. We talk in the slide here, and we talked throughout the webinar about extrinsic motivation. So there's that stuff that's happening from external to us, and rewards is a great example of that. But just people noticing that actually your mindset has shifted, or your physicality has shifted, or you've achieved a certain goal that you set out. That intrinsic motivation is what comes from within, and that's where the mindset really gets affected. So there's lots of different ways to really think about what it is that motivates you. Are you motivated by a level of freedom? Are you motivated by a level of security? Are you motivated by taking control in your life? Or are you more motivated by doing something that gives you a real sense of meaning and purpose? Again, similar to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, that actually we just say, yeah, I feel motivated, or I don't feel motivated. Dig under that, start to question yourself and your environment as to what is it that really, really motivates me and encourages me to do more of the same thing that brings me a sense of wellness. Search those things out and question those things to you. And of course, Liam and I would be more than happy to have a conversation with anyone to find out ways, techniques, tools to be able to identify what it is that motivates you. measure it against what you're currently receiving in your world, and then develop some strategies to bring more of that into your world or into your business or into your team or into your environment. And there's a combined effort, because one slide we haven't fully explored today is the social aspect of wellness, that togetherness, team sports, doing something combined together. So that kind of concludes where we're at. I'm very conscious we've got about 3 minutes left. Anything you just want to add, Liam, before I move to the final slides?
No, I think we'll move on to the questions now.
So we've just got literally a couple of slides where we've got our contact details up on the screen there. Should you want to get in touch with Liam at Fitness Rush, you want to contact me directly, I've got my laptop banner behind me. You can search either of us on social media. We'll absolutely be open to having any conversation to extend this further. But that pretty much wraps us up. And I'm proud to say on time, but we do have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions, just in case. I know we've answered throughout the afternoon, so yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Absolutely fascinating. Really, really keeping us on our toes there, and an awful lot to think about as well. We've got a comment here. I never feel motivated to go for a brisk walk. I have to say, actually, neither do I. So I never feel motivated to go for a brisk walk every day unless I have an additional purpose, such as to buy something from the shops or post something at the post office. I cannot find the will to do that every day without an extra goal. Same. So there are two of us asking this.
Okay, well, your thoughts?
Can I jump in?
Please do.
Yeah, so if I was to tell you that walking every day would lengthen your life by a certain amount, or you breathe a lot easier, you become stronger, would that be enough to get you out of your house and go for a walk? What is it you need to hear, or what kind of purpose do you need to get you walking? I'm sure Paul will talk more about that.
Yeah, we did a webinar similar to this last year, and we threw the question out to people as to what type of exercise do people do. We were on a slightly different kind of format. People were feeding that into us, and we were having some conversations. There was one chap up in Scotland. He said, I don't go to a gym, I don't go swimming, I don't exercise, don't do any of that stuff. It's tricky enough for me to take the dog for a walk twice a day. And so it was like, well, that's fantastic. It's our perception of what exercise is.
Yeah.
So if that individual and whoever's listening on this course says, well, I need that extra impetus to get me out. Well, actually, that's great. That's why people are doing exactly what I can see them doing outside this window here, which is playing golf. They're out, they're having exercise. They've found that reason. That might not be accessible to all of us, but an interest in nature, understanding the local area in which you operate. Maybe those little things will encourage you to discover more. So it's just joining up some dots, really.
We've got a comment come in there saying, think of the walk as an equivalent of taking medication. You'd rather have a walk than be on long-term medication shortly. And that's fine, but we're still talking about the motivation, isn't it? And aren't we? And with some people, regardless of what the motivation should be, you know, you've got a dicky heart and you know you should be exercising, but you know what, you just can't. So it can be tough for some people. I mean, I relate back to you need something else other than just going for a walk. So you need to be posting a letter or nipping around to Tesco's or something. I can really empathise with that. And I can also understand you'd rather be or think of the walk as the equivalent of taking medication, and that all makes sense, but it's still quite difficult.
100%, Jill, I agree with you 100%. I'm going through it right now. I have my children. I know I should be doing things, but you can't always do it, you know. It's a tough one. I'll give you that.
It's finding the motivation for you, isn't it? I think that's what basically you've been saying.
Yeah, it is. And
it's not us throwing something out and saying, this is what you need to do. It's about finding what motivates each of us personally to go ahead and do this stuff. Yeah.
There's a subtle, me being an NLP trainer and an NLP master practitioner, there's something in our language as well that we use. If I need to, if I should do, if I must do, that's where we can shift some of our language and just saying, I could choose to go out for some exercise, I could choose to go out for some walking. I am going to. These are subtle changes. So this is where we're combining the mindset to motivation to exercise. That actually, you're absolutely right. It isn't as simple as clicking your fingers and here we are. And certainly everybody is individual, which is why we've been on these webinars previously and people respond with their nutrition that actually, well, what you're doing at the moment is okay, but what if you were to choose a different, what if you add another element to that? So we would certainly are going to come onto this webinar today and say, if you just get out for a walk, your life will change. It would, but actually we know that actually it isn't as simple as that either. That it's about creating that deeper motivation. That long-term vision is the important part as well. Actually, if I'm not sure if I want to get out for some walk today and some exercise, yeah, I know if I did, it's going to actually help me achieve my long-term vision of whatever that is, then we might find a level of motivation, because we know what it's like. Once you're out, you feel very different. It's that first bit of getting out the door, isn't it? That's the challenge. So we just need to find
Jill,
strong enough to get.
So what is the reason you want to go walking?
Well, I don't.
There you go. So let's find something you do want to do.
Yeah, and that brings me on to a comment that's come in. I have some horses in a field near my house, particularly a small Shetland pony, and that sometimes motivates me to go and see it, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
I've got another comment in here. I have a cold and I'm bunged up today, so thinking I don't have the energy to go for a walk. I could change that to go down to the end of the road and back, I guess, which is, I think, exactly what you guys are saying. Just make a start, do a little bit. And I just want to hop in with this one as well, because we are running over time. Previous generations have never thought about wellness or going to the gym. Have you any tips on how we could redesign work so that activity is intrinsic to it?
I was just going to mention gardening. I know that's not totally into that, but if you enjoy gardening, you walk around your garden, you're doing something positive, you're doing something you want to be doing, and you're exercising. So that might be a small change there.
Yeah.
But yes, Paul, you want to jump onto the last point?
Yeah, very, very briefly on that last point. What happens in the workplace? Workplace has drastically changed over the last 2 or 3 years, particularly with COVID and working from home and all those different aspects. Even standing up at your desk. I'm sat down at the moment, but standing up at your desk. There's coaching that I do where it's walking coaching, taking people for a walk. So you can have walking meetings, stand-up meetings. So there's lots of stuff, and that's kind of the element of where we tidy this up for the hour. Where Liam and I are coming in terms of talking to businesses is actually what can we introduce into businesses that's going to help them a healthier, more wellness focused workplace, and what small changes can we make to encourage that to happen within the workplace. So it's probably a good question to close on, I would suggest.
It is. And thank you, Paul, and thank you, Liam. Amazing, really informative. Love the sort of banter and the comfortable atmosphere where I felt comfortable enough to be a little bit open.
You're laughing, weren't you, Jill? You're laughing at my jokes, aren't you?
Yeah, all the time. So
yes.
For our next CBC Wellness Campaign events, and we have got quite a few coming up, including our menopause cafes, which aren't quite on Eventbrite yet, please search for CBC Wellness Campaign on Eventbrite. See what we've got coming up. Go to the Cambridge Biomedical Campus YouTube channel to see all the recordings. This will be on there once it's been edited, and our previous wellness campaign and on virtual tours are on the CBC YouTube channel as well. So it is time for me to say how lovely it's been to see everybody here today in good numbers, and thank you once more to Paul and to Liam, and wishing you all a lovely day. Thank you for attending. Goodbye.
Thank you all.